Hello everybody in the BHECN office. I'm your neighbor, Diane Radigan, up here on the third floor of the Student Life Center, also in the Department of Organizational Development. I am sorry to see that you guys are moving. I'm going to miss you, but we do have an awesome strategic planning retreat coming up, and you took your HBDI surveys, and I now have your results for you. So this video will walk you through all of the data components of the 5-page report that I've attached to this email. It will start to answer some of the questions about your individual profiles. As we get closer to the retreat, we will be working at that retreat to really start to share with each other the intricacies of our profiles, and then also look at our whole entire collective brain as a team and some of the things that we need to focus on. So you're going to have a little bit of homework at the end of this video, so pay attention for you to bring to the retreat as it draws closer. So we'll see you soon, and enjoy the video. Thank you. Welcome. You are viewing the video to debrief your individual results for your Herrmann Brain Dominance Instrument assessment. So you should have received an email from me with your result packet attached. Please open that file so that we can review your individual results as I show you how Herrmann Brain Dominance Instrument can help us as a team to explore all of the different avenues of leaning into our strengths and becoming an excellent team together. I have been certified in this tool for about 4 to 5 years, and during that time I've debriefed hundreds and hundreds of individuals and teams both across the university system but also out in the broader public. And through this tool I have seen the ability for teams to be able to unlock true excellence in operating together. The first step of this process is for you to understand your individual profile. The assessment for Herrmann Brain Dominance Instrument resides within what we call a thinking styles-based assessment. There's a number of different assessments, and they all measure different things, and they all meet different needs. And this specific assessment, I want you to understand what it represents, so that as you're looking at your results, you know exactly what we were measuring and how it compares to other assessments, so you know what it is and what it isn't. So for example, we have the sphere of what we call talent, interest, and career. In this sphere, this is where a lot of the assessments that you would be familiar with are called Gallup Strengths Finders, as well as a strong interest inventory. These are things that you give people when they're looking for different career alignments or talent interests, and they're trying to figure out where their strengths lie. These assessments very commonly only measure your strengths in a period of time when you take the assessment. So if you take this assessment now or you take it 10 years from now, you'll have different strengths that will arise off of that assessment. It's very good for helping you align what you're strong at with the career and industry that you're looking at going into. The second one is psychological. Here, very many of the assessments that people are familiar with are called Myers-Briggs, often referred to as an MBTI, or a Hogan inventory. These are assessments that are considered psychological tools, and the psychological inventories will give you a vast amount of data on yourself. It's a great way to look at your interactions with others when you are looking at these results to try to understand and elevate yourself within leadership. I highly recommend these when you're trying to take on additional responsibilities or roles that are above where you are today. Once again, with this assessment, it does change over time because it is psychological and alters with the experiences you've had in life. So if you take it today and you take it 10 years from now, you've got different results on that assessment to try to use as a resource. The second to last sphere is the behavioral. Behavioral is going to be much more indicated by how you interact with others. So one example would be the 360-degree evaluation. A 360-degree evaluation is where we survey 15 of your closest peers that you work with regularly, and then they send back their perceptions of how they perceive your behaviors. And then they go to a coach. All those perceptions go to a coach, and the coach debriefs you. You can see that this particular type of an assessment is highly dependent upon the behaviors that others and the perceptions of others. your behaviors, and how others see you. So this can change over time, obviously, because you would change who you were asking for that feedback. There's also other different types of behavioral assessments as well. We're going to talk today about Herrmann Brain Dominance Instrument, and it is a thinking styles-based assessment. When we talk about thinking styles-based, what we're referring to is actually the anatomy of your brain and how it works. When we do a Herrmann assessment, the way that it comes out is that we dissect your brain into the upper modes and the lower modes, the right side of the brain and the left side of the brain, and we take all of the functions within those spheres and measure them to see the preference of your brain for those specific activities. These assessments are different from some of the other ones in that they are grounded in the physiology of your brain, and therefore only change typically when the physiology of your brain changes. So if you start to have seizures or experience seizures, or you've had some type of brain surgery, we will see dramatic influxes in your results. But unless that happens, very commonly people will take this 10 years ago or 10 years from now and get almost the same exact results. Your brain loves what it loves. Even if you try to convince your brain that you love something else, you may gain a lot of skill within that category, but it's not like loving it. I'll give you the example of, for me, you'll see very soon the inside of my brain, and for me it's finance reports. Not my friend. I don't want to do them. So if I decided today that I was going to love finance reports and I put 3 years effort into becoming a finance report expert, I would definitely elevate my skill and my capability within that category. But if you ever came to me and say, do you love doing finance reports more than you love coaching, teaching, training? Will my brain ever get to that point? That's a good question mark. So what these assessments measure is what your brain loves to do, the things that it does automatically without you even asking it. You get asked a question, you get asked to design a project, you get asked to design a PowerPoint, and these things automatically kick in without you even asking it to do so. We're only going to give you things that you already know about your brain. It's not like we're going to reveal something to you about yourself that you don't know. It's just going to be in writing now, and putting it in writing allows you to now take ownership of it, go into your teams, and be able to share what people should lean on you more for and things that you're going to ask for help from them for. This really builds camaraderie within teams because we're building a consistent language for us all to use. And it's all surrounding our brains. All of us have them. All of us use them. This really is just about us using our brains. All right, now into the methodology of how to read the HBDI results. So first, let's learn about each of the quadrants. You'll see that each quadrant has a color and also a letter. So we start up in the upper left with A, and it's blue, lower left with B, and it's green, lower right is C, and it's red, and upper right is D, and it's yellow. From this point forward, I'm just going to refer to the colors. It's how I've learned to navigate with them. So these are the quadrants we'll be referring to. Let's start with the blue quadrant. The blue quadrant has everything to do with money, finance, processes, and understanding things from start to finish, and truly being able to think about something logically, analytically, rationally, and be able to take a look from the analytics piece as to priorities. What do the priorities look like from that perspective? Blue is taking all of that left brain analytical numbers, money, finance, and combining them all together with some of those soft skills around logic and being critical and factual and realistic and rational. Moving on to the green quadrant, we have a little bit more of what we would consider getting things done and implementation and execution. This particular quadrant is very detail oriented. So this person is very focused on planning and organization and being able to see sequential documented steps. These people love to document procedures because they can see step 1, step 2, step 3, and step 4, what needs to happen. They're extremely detail oriented and they like to see things that are very organized, on time, reliable, and they are one of those people that I know you've dealt with in the past where you give them an idea and they go and run with it and you don't have any doubt that they're going to do it with excellence because they are very green and they love to check those things off. These are your list makers too. They love some lists. The one piece of green that I would address that is a little bit different from all of those pieces is what I call the safekeeping bubble. On the safekeeping bubble, we're talking about skills like conservative, dominant, controlled, safekeeping. There are these pieces where some people would actually term them as what we would call change averse. But these particular skills are critical in some of the areas of our business. If we have somebody in compliance or audit or legal, it is critical that they have some of this skill. This is the other piece of the green quadrant. Moving on to the red quadrant. In the red quadrant, we have everything having to do with relationships as well as feelings. So on this particular quadrant, you are looking at your relationships and your feelings in how I like to see them in 3 different ways. The first is intrinsically. What are things that exist within you that other people don't actually define? Your relationship to music, your relationship to symbolism, your relationship to spirituality. Some of these things are just inherently within you. Then there's the one directional outward. On these, anything where you are in front of people, talking, teaching, directing, and resonating with those individuals because you can do it in a great way, that's the one directional outward. Whether it be writing or expressing or training or lecturing or teaching, any of those attributes would come within this quadrant as well. Then we have the last way that you look at red, which is two directional. So you can develop a relationship with people, you can empathize with them, you can be friendly to them, and also be able to understand them by putting yourself in their shoes. Really strong reds can actually feel feelings off of other people without even having to ask. They understand how people will feel. This is all part of the red quadrant. Moving on to the yellow quadrant. The yellow quadrant is where everything that is created anew comes from. Anything original, creative, innovative, out of the box, big picture thinking. These are all places where you think about things that don't exist today. Whether you're an artist and you create things that don't exist today, or you are able to take two completely unrelated processes and see how they correlate together, or synthesize different pieces that aren't normally related together. You can also see very holistically as well as strategically when you're in the yellow. You can say, if we want to achieve this one big thing, here's the 5 things that we need to do to be able to make that happen. They also think in future planning. So they will think, here's where we want to be in 1 year. Here's where we want to be in 3 years. Here's where we want to be in 5 years. The other pieces that you will see here within yellow are having to do with visual. They are very visual. They like to be able to see spatial things. They are artistic. And they also have what we would consider opposite to that safekeeping bubble, some of this playful, break the rules, take some risks, test it. Why's that rule got to be a rule? Does it need to be a rule? Should we take that rule off the books? What does it look like if we try to bend those rules and being much more flexible and moving on the fly? That is all of your yellow. So these are the quadrants. And so now we're going to research how can you take your assessment results and attach them back to which of these attributes your brain prefers as a strength. So let's take a look at a profile. When we look at a profile, the first things that you want to identify with are the profile scores. Within the profile scores, you will see that you have received a score in each of the colors based off of all the many different ways that the assessment asked you questions. When you get that score, we evaluate it against a continuum. So in this sphere, we would look at anything between 0 and 34 as being what we would consider a low preference. It would reside within this inner circle, and we would say that would actually earn a 3 up here in this profile code. At the end, you're going to end up with a 4-number preference code, and it will either be 1, 2, or 3 in each quadrant. 3 would indicate a low preference. Anything 34 to 68 is going to reside you within the intermediate circle. Intermediate strengths get a 2 up in your preference code, and then they get dissected here within this second ring on the graph. Anything 68 to 100 is considered strong. It will be in this third ring. You will receive a 1 in your preference code for those scores, and it would be dissected in the third ring. These strong scores tend to start to show up in our personality traits and our interactions with people all the time. And then we have very strong. Anything over 100 also will get you a 1 within your preference code. We dissect it differently here on the graph because after having done millions of these assessments worldwide, we've identified that if you have over 100 in one of these scores, it's so prevalent about you that people can feel it off of you within moments of meeting you. So we dissect it differently on that graph. So the first thing you want to look at is these preference scores. Look at how they've ranked along the continuum, identify how they relate to your preference code, and you will see that we have documented your preference codes in the dark black line. Now, there's some other data on here, just so that you're aware. First is the adjective pairs. Adjective pairs was a very interesting part of the assessment where we actually kind of tried to put you under stress. There was a portion of the assessment where we asked you to pick between two words. You had to. There was no other choice. This is our way of kind of backing you into a corner and seeing what happened to the chemistry in your brain when you were under stress or duress. And in that situation, depending upon how you answered those adjective pairs, we were able to take your original profile and alter your under stress profile. So you will see a dotted line on your graph as well. That dotted line represents your under stress profile. Many times when I'm debriefing individuals, I look at their regular profile versus their under stress profile, and I say, tell me how that plays out in you. Very commonly, they will reflect each other. Like this one is not very different from the one in that they had originally. Probably when they get under stress or pressure, people identify that they actually seem like the same person. You will see individuals' profiles who veer very deeply into other colors. And I ask them, how does that play out in you? Do you make lists? Does that make you feel better? Do you cry? Does that make you feel better? Do you coach people? Does that make you feel better? Do you analyze? What is it that you do that makes you feel better when you start to get under that stress or pressure? It's highly, highly, highly helpful for you to reflect on that. So you have your under stress profile in the dotted line. You have your regular profile in the dark black line and all of your scores. You will see that there will also be percentages listed on the upper modes, lower modes, and the left and right brain. So let's take a look at a regular profile. This is the example of my brain. So I get to see inside of all your brains. So here's my brain. So this is my profile, and you'll see that I have about a 63 in blue, I have a 60 in green, I have 110 in red, and then I have a 81 in yellow. So when I look at this profile, it tells a lot of things about me. Obviously, I have a huge preference for the red. Thus the reason I'm teaching to you right now. Thus the reason I can express, communicate, do those relationship pieces to coach individuals. I also can see strategically. These are the pieces that are really strong on me. I'm not an artist. Don't ask me to design art. That's how you bring this profile to life, is identifying each of the quadrants and giving yourself what is it that makes you the green that you are, or the blue that you are, or the yellow that you are. I have some additional tools to help you with that, but I wanted you to be able to see a full profile. Now, the other piece that you will see in your profile packet is a additional sheet that gives some additional data on your profile. It looks like this. The second page of your profile data shows, we've reviewed all of these top numbers already. It shows key descriptors and work elements. This was where we asked you to rank the key descriptive properties of yourself and how people see you, and then also the things that you're strongest at work, the work elements. You ranked your work elements 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 5 for the strongest and 1 for the lowest. And then you picked 8 key descriptors that describe you. So if you look at the words that you've picked here of the functions that you feel like you're the strongest at, you will get some great guidance on what your colors represent. But now that you have the full list on our little cluster diagram with all the bubbles and all the descriptors of all the colors, you can take this and go back to it and say, actually, I didn't think that I was really intuitive. I think I'm more strategic. Whatever it is, it's your job to bring this profile to life and truly take ownership of it. All right, you should be well on your way to taking ownership of your own profile and all the data that's in there. You didn't learn anything new about yourself, I'm sure, but now you have the confidence to stand behind it and really be able to explain to people what your strengths are. So, your homework. What I need you to do is look at those key descriptors and the work elements that you ranked. You gave them on either a 1 to 5 ranking, and the 5 are the ones that you think you're the strongest at, and the 1s and the 2s are the ones that you think that you're not, or those work elements, and the work elements are the key descriptors, and those are the ones where you pick the 8 that describe you and then the one that most describes you. Start there and look at those and really start to come up with something you want to share with your team in the room. And what you'll be sharing is, here's 2 of the strengths that I love to do all the time. Please lean on me for these. Here's how they play out into the work that I do. And then the last thing that you're going to share is, here's an area that's a blind spot for me. Some skill within one of the colors that you really would prefer not to do, that you always try to procrastinate on, or that you lean on others for, some of those things, or you've developed some type of coping mechanism for not having to do those. That's what we want to share with the team during the homework sharing portion of the retreat. So please do that homework, and we will see you at our retreat. Call me if you have any questions. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.